So I use that because of why I think this topic is so important in terms of doing financial planning. So I want to walk you through, there are 3 steps in doing budgeting, just to give you kind of an idea in terms of the process of doing budgeting. 3 steps in terms of budgeting. The first step is to do what's referred to as a preliminary budget. Preliminary budget. Some people refer to this as a napkin budget because sometimes it's actually done on a napkin. And a preliminary budget would just be as what are sales going to be next year, gross profit, operating expense, operating profit. Maybe 4 or 5 numbers I'm going to start with in my preliminary budget. Top line revenue, gross profit, operating expenses, operating profit. We call that a preliminary budget, early budget. The second step in the budgeting process is then to take that preliminary budget and begin to add detail to it. Sales, maybe breaking sales down into a variety of different categories by product, by market, whatever. More detail in terms of my costs of sales, gross profit, and then line items for each of my operating expenses. So step 2 is a much more detailed financial budget, usually broken down on a monthly basis. We're looking at a 12-month budget, so 12 months of both revenue and expenses. The third step, now I've got my budget, I got my 12-month budget. The third step, and probably the most overlooked step, is once I have that 12-month budget, is to then monitor that budget and review that budget on a monthly basis. On a monthly basis. And then make any edits to it, make any changes to it as needed, usually on a quarterly basis. I normally don't suggest making changes to the budget on a monthly basis because things can happen month to month. But after a quarter, after 3 months, if I am way off, either way above budget or way below budget, I think that's a good time to make any edits to it, any changes to it that are required. Now, there are different approaches that companies take in creating a budget. One approach is what's referred to as a top-down approach to budgeting. Top-down would be, okay, let's start with what we think sales are going to be. All right, sales next year are going to be $2 million. Okay, based on $2 million of revenue, what's going to be our cost of sales? And working my way from top to bottom, starting with sales and then creating my budget based on my anticipated sales. That's a top-down approach. A different approach is what's referred to as a bottom-up approach to budgeting. Bottom-up approach says, okay, how much net profit would I like to see, say in 2021? Gee, we'd love to have $100,000 in net profit in 2021. So we're going to start with that number and then work our way up to see what will it take in terms of our expenses and revenue to achieve that $100,000 in net profit. That's a bottom-up approach to budgeting. My preference between the two, top to bottom, bottom up, is a bottom up approach because I am more interested in you making profit than making sales. It's hard to put sales in the bank, easier to put profit, which then translates into cash into the bank. So I would much rather you start from the bottom and say, okay, this year, how much profit can we anticipate? How much profit would we like to have? And then let's create a budget to support that level of profitability. Too often I see in small businesses, we do the opposite. We do the top-down approach. And then we find while we might achieve that sales goal, we don't end up with anywhere near the profit that we need or would like, because that hasn't been our attention. It's been sales, right? And we just, whatever we end up with on the bottom line is what we end up with. I'd much rather you see us take a bottom-up approach. Another approach to budgeting is called zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting. Typically when we do budgets, we heard this from a couple of you, if I'm coming up with a 2021 budget, I look at, okay, what were my expenses last year? What did I spend on marketing? What did I spend on utilities, payroll? And then I just build that into my 2021 budget. I essentially roll those expenses into my 2021 budget. Zero-based budgeting says, let's forget about the past. Let's come up with either a profit goal or a sales goal, and then determine what expenses will be required to achieve either that revenue or that profit. But the idea is, let's not focus on what we've done in the past in terms of those expenses. Let's focus on what we need to spend to achieve our goals in the current year. Again, we call that zero-based budgeting. It's become more popular, both big companies and small companies as well. I think it's a more proactive approach, zero-based budgeting.